What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. There's a lot of stuff that's going on right now, so I'm trying to get to everything so that I can keep you updated on what is actually happening. So today I want to address Social Security and the potential increase of 8.9%. Again, I want to address where this is coming from, why this is potentially good news and bad news, but at the same time address some very good news for people on Social Security heading into 2023. Also want to address Chinese dependency and how really the world, and especially us here in the United States, are really dependent on China for goods. And some are worried that this is actually going to increase inflation, especially here at home. We're also going to address consumer sentiment and the recession fears. Again, we actually got some good news here as well, so I will address that towards the end of this video. But let's get right into it. All I ask is if you can take the 2 seconds, go ahead, hit that like button. It really does help out the channel. Now, yesterday I talked about the Social Security cost of living adjustment and what the Senior Citizens League is projecting for 2023. Well, what we know currently, the cost of living adjustment is 5.9%. That's pretty big. That's pretty substantial, especially when we saw in 2021, the cost of living adjustment was just 1.3%. Now, the Senior Citizens League is projecting that the cost of living adjustment for Social Security is going to be 8.9% in 2023. This is a 3% increase from what we are currently sitting at. Now, currently beneficiaries are getting about $92 extra per month. This is on average. But if Social Security got an 8.9% cost of living adjustment, okay, an 8.9% raise, this would actually take the average benefit from $1,536.94 up to $1,673.72. This is an increase of $136.78 per month. Okay, almost $140 per month extra. Now, this is a major boost to benefits. And yesterday I said that if we see an 8.9% cost of living adjustment increase due to the fact that we are seeing rising inflation, this is going to hurt millions and millions of people because they're getting these checks, yes, but at the same time, prices are going up for gas, for rents, for food, right? Medications, everything's getting more expensive. But here's something else that experts are predicting. And again, I want to touch on both sides of this because there's always two sides to a story. Now, experts say if we see inflation continue to go up throughout 2022, then they are expecting a significant cost of living adjustment that would be announced in October of 2022. But what they are saying is that if we continue to see inflation slowly run up, and let's say it peaks at 9%, right? Let's say it peaks at 10%, whatever, right? It peaks somewhere around where it is now. What we are expecting is, or at least they're expecting, is it will drop significantly at the start of 2023. Now, why is this such a good thing? Well, if this happens, food prices are going to go down, gas prices will likely go down, new rents will likely go down. The Social Security beneficiaries would still have a large cost of living adjustment, even though everything else is going to cost less. So, what experts are saying is there are going to be some ups and downs when it comes to the cost of living adjustment. And when we see inflation begin to fall, that's when Social Security beneficiaries would actually come out on top. This will be the one time beneficiaries come out on top. So, they say there is some good news on the horizon, but it all comes down to when do we see inflation peak, when does it start coming out, and when is the cost of living adjustment locked in. Those three things matter. And so again, it's going to be timing of all this, but there is some good news on the horizon. Now, let's talk about China and the U.S. and mainly the global dependency on China and their goods. Well, China's share of world exports has actually rose to 15.4% in 2021. This is the highest it has been since 2012. But the problem is that the world is greatly reliant on China for their goods. And this isn't something new. This has always been a problem. But this is also why many analysts believe that China's recent COVID lockdowns are the biggest threat to global inflation, even bigger than what it was in 2020. And obviously, I don't need to remind you of what happened in 2020, but it was greatly concerning. But now, many wonder, how do we make it out of this without Chinese products or rising inflation? And the truth, honestly, is that we might not be able to. The truth, according to multiple analysts, they're saying we will either need to stop relying on Chinese goods or we must accept the fact that prices are rising. Now, here's something I can tell you. When it comes to Chinese goods, a lot of people buy them. I think everybody does. I probably have dozens of Chinese products just around me right now. And the truth is that they're cheaper. Some Chinese products are much cheaper and they do just as good of a job as a US made product or another country's product, right? But again, it comes down to price. And when we are seeing right now that prices are rising across the board, everybody wants to save money. And so that's one of the issues is, okay, well, we can save money, great, but the problem might be we're going to be relying on China again. So either we pay a little bit more and we don't rely on China, or we pay less, rely on China, and hopefully things don't completely get out of hand. Because what you need to keep in mind is if China continues their lockdowns, well, we're reliant on their products. And if we don't get their products, some businesses will close, right? The American people will probably suffer in one way or another. May not be, physically suffering, but they'd suffer in one way or another. And again, not the greatest news. But again, we're reliant on China. And that's what lawmakers keep saying we have to move away from. So we'll see if we actually do that. And now, let's address the consumer sentiment index that came out yesterday. I briefly touched on this yesterday, but I want to kind of talk about this a little bit more because there's some good news here. This index, it showed an increase of 59.4% to 65.7%. And granted, that's not the biggest increase, okay? That's what, 6%? That's not huge, okay? But it is a big deal because the last time we saw consumer sentiment jump this much, okay, the last time this happened was back in January. Now, consumers then were projected to save money. They were projected to not want to spend on anything because of uncertainty in the markets, right? We didn't know what the Federal Reserve was going to do. We didn't know about COVID, right? Well, we did know about COVID. We didn't know what COVID was going to look like moving forward, right? And people were just worried because they didn't want to hurt the economy. But then come February, and then guess what we get? We get a war. And then after we hear the word war and people are going at each other, well, then that was more of a sign that, okay, the American people need to stop spending money, need to save, they need to pay off debt, they need to make sure they have a backup plan, make sure they have some money in reserves, right? An emergency fund, whatever. They are going to stop spending money. It was going to hurt the economy. Well, that never happened. Consumers actually kept spending money. The American people are traveling more than they have in the past year. Banks are actually saying that Americans are saving more money now. Okay? They are actually saving more money now. Okay? So that's great. They're investing more money now. That's good, especially when the market's down. That's a good time to invest. And they're also putting a lot of these additional purchases on credit cards. That's the one bad thing. So consumer sentiment is, yes, consumers are still spending, and that's great. The only problem is, where are they putting this money? How are they spending? And if they're sticking on credit cards, that's not the best news. Now, the good news is that we're not expecting a recession because of this, because in order to reach that point of a recession, we would have to spend less money. But if consumers keep spending more and more, that's not likely to happen. Only the bad news, though, is we can still see struggling Americans if they can't pay for their credit cards. Okay, they can't pay their credit card bills. That would turn an issue. So, the one thing I just want to end this with is keep your purchases in mind. Really consider how you're making these purchases. If you're putting it on a credit card, do you have the ability to pay off that purchase? And I'm not talking, make minimum payments over the next 3 years. I'm talking about, can you go to your bank, okay, and say, okay, yep, I have all the money in my bank. I'm going to go pay this off. Do you have the ability to do that? If you do, fine. If you don't, I'd highly consider maybe waiting, not putting a purchase on a credit card, because that could be disastrous if something bad were to happen later on. So that's what we know at this time. Again, if I learn more, okay, as I find out more, I will come back and share all latest news and updates with you regarding Social Security, regarding our Chinese dependency, regarding consumer sentiment, and everything else in between. All right? So you guys have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Hopefully you enjoy your Friday. Hopefully you have an incredible weekend planned. If you do and you have something fun, comment down below. Let me know what you are planning to do. Also, just want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor, go ahead, hit that like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.